John Henry raced 83 times, won 39 of them, captured 17 Grade 1 stakes, and retired as the richest racehorse on the planet, with nearly $6.6 million in career earnings. That was before Breeders' Cup purses even existed. To put that in perspective, his own father once sold for $900. John Henry wasn't well bred. He wasn't well built. He wasn't even well behaved. As a yearling, he walked into the sales ring at Keeneland with blood dripping down his face because he just slammed his head into his stall wall. He sold for $1,100. A vet later voided a $7,500 sale because his knees were so bad nobody believed he'd last. So how did a horse that nobody wanted become the most beloved champion of his era? This is his story. John Henry was born on March 9, 1975, at Golden Chance Farm near Paris, Kentucky. His sire was a stallion named Old Bob Bowers, a horse with enough talent to equal a world record on turf, but also a reputation for being genuinely vicious. Old Bob Bowers attacked people during his stud career. He once sold for just $900. His dam, once double, was large and big-boned but had never produced anything special. The stud fee to breed the pairing was $500. From the moment John Henry arrived, he was a problem. Not the kind of spirited, fiery problem that trainers romanticize. He was mean, genuinely, dangerously mean. As a colt, he developed a habit of ripping the steel water buckets and feed tubs off his stall walls and stomping them completely flat. His owners looked at this undersized, badly conformed colt destroying steel with his hooves and named him after the folk hero John Henry, the legendary steel driving man. That name would prove prophetic, but not in the way anyone expected. When John Henry went through the Keeneland January sale as a yearling in 1976, he was a disaster in the ring. He'd bashed his head moments before, blood running down his forehead. He was undersized. He was back at the knee, a conformation flaw that typically guarantees a short racing career. A man named John Calloway bought him for $1,100. Calloway later told Sports Illustrated, "The horse looked like a drowned rat." Calloway eventually gave up on the horse and sold him to Harold Snowden Jr. for $2,200. Snowden made one critical decision. He gelded John Henry, hoping it would calm the animal's savage temperament. The veterinarian who performed the surgery reportedly said he'd never seen a horse that needed it more. But even after gelding, John Henry remained difficult, mean in his stall, aggressive around handlers. A horse that bit and kicked and seemed to resent the very idea of cooperation. A subsequent buyer tried to purchase him for $7,500, but a vet examination killed the deal. John Henry's knees were too compromised. Nobody wanted to take the risk. But then a New York bicycle salesman named Sam Rubin entered the picture. Rubin wasn't a horseman. He was an immigrant businessman with a gambler's eye who decided he wanted to own a racehorse. Rubin bought John Henry for $25,000, sight unseen, over the phone. It was a flyer. A long-shot bet from a man who knew nothing about conformation or pedigree. Little did anyone know, that phone call would change the history of American racing. John Henry had actually made his racing debut on May 20th, 1977, winning a 4-furlong maiden race at Jefferson Downs in Louisiana. He showed flashes he won the Lafayette Futurity as a 2-year-old, but for every flash of talent, there were stretches of mediocrity. At one point, he lost 10 straight races. He bounced between trainers and ran in low-level claiming races and minor stakes, the kind of races where any other trainer in the barn could literally buy your horse out from under you for a few $1,000s. When Rubin took over ownership, he installed trainer Bob Donato, and Donato did something that changed everything. He looked at this undersized, bad-kneed, ill-tempered gelding running mediocre races on dirt and had a hunch. He entered John Henry in a $35,000 claiming race on grass at Belmont Park. John Henry won by 14 lengths. 14. On turf, something clicked. The horse that looked ordinary on dirt became a completely different animal on grass. He would never run in a claiming race again. In his next start, he won an allowance race. Then he started running in stakes company. In his 4th grass stakes attempt, he demolished 8 rivals by 12 lengths in the Grade 3 round table handicap at Arlington Park. But here's the thing, John Henry was still inconsistent. He'd win a stakes race, then disappear for months of mediocrity. His knees were a constant concern. His temperament made him difficult to train. The question was whether this horse had a ceiling, or whether someone just hadn't figured out how to unlock whatever was burning inside him. In 1979, John Henry was transferred to trainer Lefty Nickerson. And later that year, Reuben made the decision that would define the horse's career. He shipped John Henry out to California and handed him to trainer Ron McAnally. McAnally was different. Where previous trainers had tried to break John Henry's spirit or muscle through his stubbornness, McAnally trained him with what the Kentucky Horse Park later described as carrots, apples, and love. He didn't fight the horse. He respected John Henry's intelligence, and John Henry, in his own grudging way, began to respect McAnally back. The results were immediate. Under McAnally, John Henry reeled off 6 consecutive stakes victories in 1980, including Grade 1 wins in the San Luis Rey, the San Juan Capistrano, the Hollywood Invitational, and the Oak Tree Invitational. 6 straight, all graded stakes. He finished his 5-year-old season with 8 wins from 12 starts and earned over $925,000. He won the Eclipse Award as Champion Turf Horse. A horse that had sold for $1,100 with blood on his face was now the best grass horse in America, and he was just getting started. 1981 was the year John Henry transcended racing and became a folk hero. At 6 years old, he started 10 times. He won 8, not 8 of 20, 8 of 10. He repeated in the San Luis Rey, the Hollywood Invitational, and the Oak Tree Invitational. He won the Santa Anita Handicap, one of the most prestigious older horse races in the country. He won the Sword Dancer. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup on dirt at Belmont Park, proving he wasn't just a turf horse, he could beat the best on any surface. But the race that made him a legend was the inaugural Arlington Million. This was the first $1 million horse race in history. It was nationally televised. International horses had shipped in from Europe and beyond. It was America versus the world, and John Henry was carrying the flag. Coming down the stretch, an Irish 5-year-old named the Bart looked like the winner. Everyone watching, including the racing judges, was sure the Bart had gotten there first. They were wrong. The photo finish revealed that John Henry had launched one of his trademark come-from-behind rallies and won by a nose, maybe less than a nose by a lip. The stadium erupted. The little gelding that nobody wanted had just won the richest race ever run, beating international competition on the biggest stage the sport had ever seen. At year's end, John Henry was named Horse of the Year. Not just named, he was the first unanimous selection in Eclipse Award history. Every single voter chose John Henry. That wouldn't happen again until American Pharoah won the Triple Crown 34 years later. If John Henry had retired right there, his story would have been remarkable enough. But here's the crazy part. He kept going. Real quick guys, before we get into what happened next, if you're enjoying this story, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We tell stories like this every week. Now let's talk about what made John Henry truly unprecedented. He won the Santa Anita Handicap again in 1982. He captured the Hollywood Turf Cup in 1983 and became the first racehorse in history to surpass $4 million in career earnings. His jockey, Chris McCarron, who rode him in his final 14 starts, described John Henry simply, "I'm just along for the ride." And John Henry had these quirks that made fans fall in love with him beyond the racing itself. After winning a race, he'd reportedly turn and stare at the tote board as if checking his own time, or maybe the payoff. After losing a race once, he dragged his groom toward the winner's circle anyway, refusing to accept that he hadn't won. Sam Reuben loved the horse so much that when John Henry turned 13, Reuben threw him a bar mitzvah. This wasn't just a racehorse. This was a character, a personality, a force of nature trapped inside a small, badly built body that science said shouldn't have lasted this long. Most racehorses begin to decline by age 5 or 6. The great ones retire by 7. Studies show measurable speed loss in thoroughbreds past that age. Nobody told John Henry. In 1984, at the age of 9 years old, in a sport where most competitors are 3 and 4, John Henry authored what might have been the most remarkable season in American racing history. He won 6 stakes races. 3 of them were Grade 1s. He won the Arlington Million for the second time, still the only horse ever to accomplish that feat. He won the Golden Gate Handicap, the Sunset Handicap, and the Ballantine Scotch Classic. He earned over $2.3 million in that single season alone, pushing his career total to the highest in history. His final race, the Ballantine Scotch Classic at the Meadowlands, captured everything that made John Henry who he was. As he surged to the lead down the stretch, track announcer Dave Johnson called out what every fan was feeling. "The old man, John Henry, takes command." He pulled away to his 39th career victory. He was named Horse of the Year for the second time. the oldest horse ever to receive that honor, the only horse to win Horse of the Year. In non-consecutive years, he had won more graded stakes, 25, than any thoroughbred in history. But here's the thing, John Henry was scheduled to run in the inaugural Breeders' Cup that November. It would have been the crowning moment, the biggest new event in racing, and its biggest star headlining. Then a strained ligament in his left foreleg forced him out. Sam Rubin initially planned to bring John Henry back as a 10-year-old in 1985. But when the horse suffered another leg injury during training, Rubin made the call. He couldn't risk it. If he'd have broken down on the racetrack, Rubin said, I couldn't have lived with it. The old man was finally done racing. But his story was far from over. Rubin sent John Henry to the Hall of Champions at the Kentucky Horse Park in Lexington, where he would spend the next 22 years as the park's most beloved resident. School children visited him by the thousands. He was featured on the Today Show. People magazine named him one of its most intriguing personalities, alongside Lee Iacocca and Bill Murray. He was called a geriatric marvel. And John Henry remained John Henry to the end. He still bit. He still kicked. His handlers developed a grudging mutual respect with the old champion, but nobody ever mistook him for gentle. There were persistent rumors over the years that the horse had secretly died, and the park had replaced him with a look-alike. When asked about it, one of his long-suffering handlers replied, "If that had really happened, don't you think we'd have replaced him with something nicer?" Years later, when they x-rayed John Henry's legs as a precaution, the veterinarian was stunned. The films were so clean they could have been mistaken for a yearling's. Studies also revealed that John Henry's heart was significantly larger than the average thoroughbreds. There had been a champion hiding inside that ugly, undersized body all along. It just took the right people and the right surface to find it. When it was all said and done, John Henry compiled a record of 83 starts, 39 wins, 15 seconds, and 9/3. He earned $6,597,947, every dollar of it earned before the Breeders' Cup era inflated purses to the millions. He won 7 Eclipse Awards, including 4 Champion Turf Horse titles, Champion Older Horse, and 2 Horse of the Year honors. He won at 19 different racetracks, including one in Japan. He was inducted into the National Museum of Racing Hall of Fame in 1990. He was ranked 23rd among the greatest American racehorses of the 20th century. But the numbers only tell half the story. John Henry wasn't the fastest horse. He wasn't the most athletic. He wasn't bred for greatness. What made John Henry legendary was something that doesn't show up in a pedigree chart or a conformation analysis. It was will, raw, stubborn, almost spiteful determination to win. The same fire that made him tear steel buckets off walls as a colt made him charge past horses in the stretch at age 9. He simply refused to lose. His jockey McCarran said it best, "Everywhere John Henry raced, the crowd doubled." He did more for racing than almost any horse in history, and he did it as a gelding with no breeding value, no future beyond the track, running year after year because running was the only thing he had. On October 8, 2007, at the age of 32, John Henry was euthanized at the Kentucky Horse Park after developing kidney problems. He was buried that night in front of the Hall of Champions, at a spot in front of his paddock, the patch of ground he'd walked every day for over 2 decades. A horse that sold for $1,100 with blood on his face. A horse that 3 different owners gave up on. A horse whose own vet said he'd never seen one that needed gelding more. That horse became the richest racehorse in the world, a 2-time Horse of the Year, and perhaps the most improbable champion any sport has ever produced. There's a bronze statue of him at Arlington Park. It's called Against All Odds, and that tells you everything you need to know about John Henry. So, what's your favorite underdog story in racing? Is it John Henry? Or is there a horse you think had an even more unlikely rise? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe. We do deep dives like this every single week. And check out this video right here for another story you won't believe. See you in the next one.